Jake Morrison walked off the transport ship with slow, heavy steps. The bright lights of Luna City Spaceport hurt his eyes after 3 years in the dark spaces between stars. Behind him, 3 other soldiers followed like shadows. They all looked tired. They all looked older than their years. Lisa Grant held her left arm close to her body. The metal arm that replaced her real one caught the light and threw it back in sharp flashes. She was 20 years old, but walked like someone much older. The weight of what she had seen and done pressed down on her shoulders. Danny Wright jumped when a door slammed shut somewhere in the spaceport. His hand moved to his hip, where his weapon used to hang. But there was no weapon there now. Just empty space and old habits that would not die. He was 19 and had been fighting aliens since he was 16. Katie Bell stayed quiet as they walked through the crowds of normal people. People who had never seen a Zephyrian warrior. People who had never watched their friends die in the cold vacuum of space. She was 21, but felt like she had lived 100 years. Jake was 32, and their leader. He had kept these young soldiers alive through battles that should have killed them all. Now he had to lead them through something that scared him more than any alien weapon. They had to go back to school. The war was over. Humanity had won. The Zephyrians had retreated to their home worlds after 3 years of fighting. Everyone said it was impossible. The aliens had better ships, better weapons, better technology. But humans had something the aliens did not understand. Humans never gave up. Jake remembered the Battle of Mars Station. His unit had been trapped, with no ammunition and no backup. They had used chairs and tables as weapons. They had torn apart their own ships to make bombs. When the Zephyrians saw humans fighting with kitchen knives and broken metal, they learned to fear the crazy species from Earth. But now the war was over, and the government had new rules. All veterans under 25 had to finish high school before they could get normal jobs. The officials said it would help them adjust to peaceful life. They said it would give them the normal experiences they had missed while fighting. Jake looked at the papers in his hand. He was being sent to Jefferson High School in Colorado, not as a student, but as a counselor to help veteran students adjust. The idea made his stomach hurt. He had commanded troops in battle. He had made decisions that saved thousands of lives. Now he had to deal with teenagers who worried about homework and dates. The flight to Earth took 6 hours. Jake spent the time reading files about his new assignment. Danny, Lisa, and Katie would be students at Jefferson High. There was also Alex Stone, who had commanded a warship at age 18. Now he needed to finish his senior year. Jake tried to imagine Alex Stone sitting in a classroom learning about history he had lived through. Alex had fought in the Battle of Europa, one of the most important victories of the war. But now he would be just another student. When they landed in Colorado, Jake felt the weight of real gravity for the first time in months. Earth felt heavy. After the artificial gravity of spaceships, the air smelled different too. It smelled like growing things and rain, not the recycled air of military vessels. Jefferson High School looked like every other suburban school Jake had ever seen. Brick buildings, wide hallways, lockers that slammed shut with metal clangs. Normal teenagers walked around carrying books and talking about normal teenage things. None of them had ever seen an alien. None of them had ever held a weapon in anger. Principal Helen Carter met Jake at the front office. She was a thin woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at Jake like he was a problem she had to solve. "Mr. Morrison," she said, shaking his hand, "I hope you understand what we are trying to do here. These children have been through terrible things. We want to give them normal lives." Jake nodded, but said nothing. He wondered if she really understood what these children had done. They were not victims who needed to be saved. They were heroes who had saved everyone else. I have concerns, Principal Carter continued. These students have been trained to kill. They have seen violence. I worry about the other students. They have also been trained to protect, Jake said quietly. They risked their lives to keep people safe. People like your other students. Principal Carter did not look convinced. She led Jake through the halls to meet his charges. They found Danny first, standing alone by his locker. Other students walked around him, but did not talk. To him, he looked lost and small in the crowded hallway. Lisa was in the library, reading a book about engineering. Her metal arm rested on the table, and Jake could see other students staring at it when they thought she was not looking. She ignored them all and kept reading. Katie sat in the cafeteria with an empty tray in front of her. She watched everything and everyone, her eyes constantly moving. Jake recognized the behavior. She was checking for threats, looking for escape routes. You learned to do that when death could come from any direction. Alex Stone was different. He stood with a group of normal students, and they seemed to be listening to him. He was tall and confident, and when he spoke, others paid attention. Being a ship commander had taught him how to lead. These are your students, Principal Carter said. I expect you to help them behave appropriately. Jake wanted to tell her that these young people had more experience with appropriate behavior under pressure than anyone in the school. But he kept quiet. He was learning that civilian life had its own rules, and those rules often made no sense. That afternoon, Jake gathered his 4 veterans in an empty classroom. They sat in a circle and looked at each other. None of them wanted to be there. This is going to be strange, Jake said. You all know that. But we will get through it together. Sir, Danny said, I do not understand why we need to be here. I led a squad for 2 years. I made decisions under fire. Now they want me to ask permission to use the bathroom. Lisa flexed her metal fingers. The other students stare at me like I am some kind of monster. They do not know what I sacrificed to save my unit. They are just kids, Katie said quietly. They have never seen real danger. They worry about tests and popularity contests while we worried about staying alive. Alex leaned back in his chair. Maybe that is the point. Maybe. We are here to remember what normal feels like. Jake looked at his young veterans. They had faced impossible odds and won. They had proven that humans could overcome any challenge. But high school might be their biggest challenge yet. Here, their experience meant nothing. Here, they were just students who had to follow rules made by people who had never faced real danger. Outside the classroom window, normal teenagers played on the football field. They laughed and ran and acted their age. Jake wondered if his veterans would ever be able to do the same, or if they even wanted to. The war had been simple. There were enemies to fight and battles to win. High school was different. Here, the rules were not clear, and victory was not obvious. Jake had a feeling that the next few months would test them all in ways the war never had. The first week at Jefferson High School was harder than any battle Jake had ever fought. He watched his veterans struggle with things that should have been simple. Things like sitting still during boring lectures and pretending to care about subjects they already knew better than their teachers. Alex Stone got in trouble on his second day. His history teacher, Mr. Richard Barnes, was talking about the war with the Zephyrians. Mr. Barnes had never left Earth, but he spoke like he knew everything about the battles. The humans won because of superior technology, Mr. Barnes said, pointing at pictures on the smartboard. Our weapons were better designed. Alex raised his hand. That is not correct, sir. Mr. Barnes looked annoyed. Excuse me? I was there, Alex said calmly. I commanded the destroyer ship Lightning during the Battle of Europa. We won because we used our damaged ships as weapons. We rammed them into the alien fleet. Technology. did not save us. Sacrifice did. The classroom went quiet. Other students stared at Alex with wide eyes. Mr. Barnes turned red in the face. You will not correct me in my classroom, Mr. Barnes said. You are just a student here. I am a student who lived through what you are teaching, Alex replied. Should I not share what really happened? That afternoon, Alex sat in detention. Jake found him there, writing lines that said, I will respect my teachers. Alex looked up when Jake walked in. This is insane, Alex said quietly. I commanded 300 people. I made decisions that saved thousands of lives. Now I am being punished for telling the truth. Jake sat down next to him. Civilian life has different rules. Stupid rules, Alex muttered. Danny was having his own problems. During chemistry class, his teacher decided to show the students a small explosion. She mixed two chemicals together and lit them. The sound was tiny, nothing like the plasma bombs Danny had faced in the war. But his body did not know that the small pop made Danny hit the floor. His hands covered his head, and he curled up tight. In his mind, he was back on the asteroid base, where Zephyrian bombs had torn through the walls. He could smell the burning metal and hear his friends screaming. The other students started laughing. They thought it was funny that the tough soldier boy was scared of a little noise. They did not know that Danny had once defused a Zephyrian plasma bomb while enemy fire rained down around him. They did not know he had saved his entire unit by staying calm when death was seconds away. What a freak, one boy said loudly. The space cadet is broken. Danny got up slowly. His face was red with shame. Jake wanted to tell those kids what Danny had really done in the war, but he stayed quiet. Danny ran out of the classroom and did not come back. Jake found him later in the empty gym, sitting alone on the bleachers. Danny was staring at his hands. I used to be brave, Danny said without looking up. I used to lead other soldiers. Now I'm afraid of everything. You are not afraid, Jake said. You are careful. There is a difference. Tell that to the kids who laugh at me. Lisa faced different problems. Her metal arm made her famous in the worst way. Students followed her around, asking questions and making jokes. They wanted to know if she could crush things with her hand. They asked if she was part robot now. Can you feel with that thing? A girl named Brenda asked during lunch. She was sitting with a group of popular kids who all stared at Lisa like she was a circus act. It works differently than a real arm, Lisa said quietly. She was trying to eat her sandwich with her right hand while keeping her left arm hidden under the table. Does it hurt? Another girl asked. No, Lisa said. How did you lose the real one? Brenda pressed. Lisa stopped eating. Her jaw got tight. I lost it saving my friends. Saving them from what? Brenda asked. Like, was it a car accident or something? Lisa looked at her for a long moment. I lost it holding up a falling wall while my squad escaped from the Zephyrian attack. The wall was made of metal beams that weighed tons. I held it up until everyone was safe. Then it crushed my arm. The popular kids went quiet. They had not expected a real answer. That sounds made up, Brenda said finally. Lisa stood up and walked away. She did not finish her lunch. Katie had the strangest problem of all. She was too smart for her classes. During her communication skills class, the teacher was trying to explain how different cultures might have different ways of talking. Imagine if you had to talk to someone from a completely different culture, the teacher sighed. How would you communicate? Katie raised her hand. I have experience with that. Oh, have you traveled abroad? The teacher asked with a smile. I was the communication officer for the Joint Humanitarian Fleet, Katie said. I learned 4 alien languages and created new translation protocols. I helped negotiate the peace treaty with the Zephyrian Empire. The teacher looked confused. That sounds very creative, Katie. But we are talking about real situations. That was a real situation, Katie said. I had certificates of achievement from the Galactic Council. Please stay focused on the lesson, the teacher said. Katie sank down in her seat. She had spoken to beings from across the galaxy. She had prevented wars with her words. But here, nobody believed her. At lunch, the four veterans sat together at a table in the corner. They ate quietly while normal teenagers laughed and talked around them. I do not understand this place, Danny said. In the war, if you were good at something, people respected you. Here, being good at something just makes you weird. They do not want us to be good at things, Lisa said. They want us to be normal. What is normal? Alex asked, caring about who is dating whom. Worrying about what clothes to wear. We fought to save the human race. How do we pretend that never happened? Katie looked around the cafeteria. They are not bad people. They are just young. They have never had to grow up fast like we did. Maybe that is the problem, Jake said, sitting down with him. You grew up too fast. Now you have to learn how to be young again. I do not want to be young, Alex said. I want to be useful. You are useful, Jake said. But this is a different kind of mission. The goal is not to win battles. The goal is to learn how to live without battles. That afternoon, things got worse. During lunch, a boy named Trevor Hamilton decided to make fun of Danny. Trevor was big and popular, the kind of kid who picked on others to make himself feel important. Hey, Space Case, Trevor called out as Danny walked by. Going to dive under. A table again today? Danny stopped walking, but did not turn around. I heard you cry at night, Trevor said louder. Do you have nightmares about the big scary aliens? Trevor's friends laughed. Other students turned to watch. Danny's hands curled into fists. Jake knew what Danny was thinking. Danny had killed Zephyrian warriors with his bare hands. He could break Trevor in half without breathing hard. But Danny also knew that would end everything. One fight and he would be thrown out of school, maybe sent to prison. So Danny did the hardest thing he had ever done. He walked away. Trevor and his friends laughed louder. They called him a coward. They said he was all talk and no action. That night, Jake found Danny sitting outside the school, staring at the stars. I could have stopped him, Danny said. I could have made him apologize. Yes, Jake said. But then what? Then he would know not to mess with me. And then you would be just another violent kid who got kicked out of school. Is that what you want? Danny was quiet for a long time. No, but I do not know how to be weak. You are not weak, Jake said. You are controlled. There is a difference. It does not feel different. Jake sat down next to him. This is the hardest mission any of us have ever had. We have to learn how to live in a world where our skills do not matter, where our experience counts for nothing, where being a hero makes you a freak. How do we do it? Danny asked. I do not know yet, Jake said honestly. But we will figure it out. We always do. Above them, the stars looked the same as they had during the war. But everything else was different. Out there, they had been soldiers. Here, they were just kids who had to learn how to be normal. The problem was, none of them remembered how to be normal. They had forgotten how to be young, and nobody seemed to want to help them remember. 2 weeks into the school year, Jake realized the real problem was not his veterans. The real problem was that nobody understood what they had been through. The teachers, his students, even the principal saw them as broken kids who needed to be fixed. They did not see them as heroes who had saved the world. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in the cafeteria. Katie was eating lunch alone, reading a book about alien languages. At the table next to her, a group of boys were making jokes about the war. I bet those space soldiers were just scared the whole time, one boy said, laughing. Running around screaming like babies. Yeah, another boy agreed. My dad says they probably made up half the stories. How hard could it be to fight some aliens? I heard most of them died because they were stupid, a third boy added. Space idiots who got what they deserved. Katie's book fell from her hands. She stood up slowly and walked to their table. The boys looked up at her with grins on their faces. What did you just say? Katie asked quietly. We were talking about the war, the first boy said. You know, how all those soldiers were probably just cowards. Katie's voice stayed calm, but her words cut like knives. Those soldiers were my friends. I watched them die to protect people like you. Tommy Rodriguez was 19 when he threw himself on a Zephyrian grenade to save his squad. Maria Santos was 20 when she flew her damaged ship into an alien destroyer to stop it from reaching Earth. They were not cowards. They were heroes. The cafeteria was getting quiet. Other students were turning to listen. Captain Chun held off 50 Zephyrian warriors with just a broken rifle, while his team evacuated wounded civilians. Katie continued. He knew he was going to die, but he bought them time to escape. Lieutenant Park stayed behind on a damaged space station to manually control the life support systems. She saved 300 people and died when the station exploded. Her voice got stronger. Private Johnson was 18 when he lost both legs in a bombing. He could have gone home, but he stayed and became a communications officer. He coordinated rescue missions from his wheelchair and saved thousands of lives. These were not space idiots. These were people who gave everything so you could sit here and make jokes. The boys at the table looked uncomfortable now. Other students were staring. Katie was not done. You want to know what it was like? It was watching your best friend float away into space because his suit was torn. It was eating the same protein bars for 6 months because supply ships could not get through enemy lines. It was sleeping in shifts because the aliens attacked at random hours. It was being afraid every single day, but doing your job anyway because people were counting on you. The first boy tried to speak. You were just what? Katie asked. Just insulting people who died for you? Just making fun of people who gave up their childhood so you could keep yours? The entire cafeteria was silent now. Even the lunch workers had stopped what they were doing to listen. I was 21 when the war ended, Katie said, but I felt like I was 50. I had seen things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. I had made decisions that determined whether people lived or died. And I would do it all again to protect people like you, even though you clearly do not deserve it. She walked back to her table, picked up her book, and left. The cafeteria stayed quiet for a long time after she was gone. Principal Carter called Katie to her office an hour later. She was not happy. You disrupted the entire cafeteria, Principal Carter said. You made other students uncomfortable. This is exactly the kind of behavior we cannot tolerate. They were insulting dead soldiers. Katie said, they were just talking. You overreacted. Katie stared at her. Overreacted? Yes. You need to learn to control your emotions. This is a school, not a battlefield. That afternoon, Katie was suspended for 3 days for disrupting the learning environment. The boys who had made fun of dead soldiers got no punishment. At all, Jake found out about the suspension from Alex, who was angry enough to put his fist through a wall. This is insane, Alex said. Katie tells the truth about what we went through, and she gets punished. Those jerks make fun of our dead friends, and nothing happens to them. The system is not fair, Jake agreed. But Katie knew that when she spoke up. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit there and let them say whatever they want? Jake did not have a good answer. Danny was having his own crisis. The school had a zero-tolerance policy about weapons. Any object that could be considered dangerous was banned. That included the multi-tool Danny had carried since basic training. The tool was small and had different attachments: screwdrivers, pliers, a small knife blade, wire cutters. Danny had used it to repair life support systems while under enemy fire. It had saved his life and the lives of his squad dozens of times, but when a teacher saw it clipped to his belt, Danny was immediately sent to the office. "This is a weapon," the assistant principal said, holding up the tool. "We have a zero-tolerance policy." "It is not a weapon," Danny said. "It is a repair tool. It has a knife blade, a very small one. I use it to strip wires and cut tape." "Rules are rules," the assistant principal said. "You are suspended for 5 days." Danny tried to explain that the tool was part of his standard equipment. He tried to show them his military identification, but they did not care. Rules were rules. Meanwhile, Lisa was finding her place in the most unexpected location. The school's engineering club met after classes in the workshop. Most of the students, there were quiet kids who liked to build things and solve problems. When Lisa walked into the workshop, the other students stared at her metal arm. But their stares were different. They were not looking at her like she was a freak. They were looking at her like she was interesting. "How does it work?" a boy named Peter asked. "The arm, I mean." Lisa was used to people asking rude questions about her arm. But Peter sounded genuinely curious, not mean. "Neural interface," Lisa said. "It reads the electrical signals from my brain and translates them into movement." "That is amazing," a girl named Susan said. "Can you feel things with it?" "Not exactly. But it has pressure sensors that send signals back to my brain. It is not the same as real feeling, but it works." For the first time since arriving at school, Lisa felt comfortable. These kids understood technology. They appreciated engineering. They were not scared of her arm or sorry for her. They thought it was cool. "Could you help us with our project?" Peter asked. "We are trying to build a robotic hand for the science fair, but we cannot get the fingers to move right." Lisa smiled. "I think I can help with that." Alex was having better luck with student politics. He had decided to run for class president, mostly because he was tired of watching incompetent people make bad decisions. His campaign was simple. He stood up in front of the class and told them exactly what he thought. "Most student government is a joke," he said. "You elect people based on who is popular, not who can actually lead. You make rules that do not make sense, and then complain when things do not work." Other students expected him to promise things like better food in the cafeteria or longer lunch breaks. Instead, Alex talked about real leadership. "Leading means making hard decisions that people might not like, but that are necessary," he said. "It means taking responsibility when things go wrong. It means putting the needs of the group before your own needs." To everyone's surprise, Alex won by the biggest margin in the school's history. Students were tired of the same old promises. They wanted someone who would actually do something. His first act as class president was to propose a new student code of conduct. Instead of arbitrary rules about dress codes and hall passes, Alex suggested a system based on honor and responsibility. "Treat others with respect," he said at the first student council meeting. "Take responsibility for your actions. Help others when they need it. Follow these 3 rules, and most other rules become unnecessary." The teachers and administrators were not happy with Alex's ideas. They preferred their long lists of specific rules that covered every possible situation. But the students loved it. Jake watched his veterans slowly finding their places in the school. They were not becoming normal teenagers. They were becoming something better. They were showing the other students what real leadership looked like. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Principal Carter called Jake to her office on Friday afternoon. "Your students are causing problems," she said. "They do not follow the normal social patterns. They question authority. They make other students feel inadequate. They are showing other students what excellence looks like," Jake said. "This is a high school, not a military academy. We need students who fit in, not students who stand out." Jake looked at her for a long moment. What if fitting in is not the goal? What if the goal is to become better people? Principal Carter did not have an answer for that weekend. Jake took his veterans out for pizza. They sat around a table and talked about their week. "I do not understand this place," Danny said. "They punish people for being competent and reward people for being average." "Maybe that is the point," Lisa said. "Maybe we are not here to become like them. Maybe we are here to show them what they could become." Alex nodded. "The other students are starting to change. They ask better questions in class. They stand up straighter. They take more responsibility for their actions." The big test came 3 weeks later. Jefferson High School held their annual Crisis Simulation Day. It was supposed to teach students what to do in an emergency. The school administration had made it more realistic this year. They wanted to show students what an alien attack might look like. Jake almost laughed when he read the memo. They were going to simulate something his veterans had lived through for real. He wondered how the normal students would handle it. Principal Carter gathered all the teachers in the morning before the simulation started. "This will be chaotic," she told them. "Students will panic. They will not know what to do. Your job is to guide them and keep them calm." The simulation was supposed to last all day. Emergency coordinators from the city came to watch. They expected to see confusion, fear, and students who needed lots of help to follow basic safety rules. At 9 in the morning, the fire alarm rang. But instead of the normal fire drill signal, the speakers crackled with a recorded message. "Attention, all students and staff. This is not a drill. Unknown aircraft have been spotted approaching the school. All students must evacuate immediately. Follow your teachers to the designated safe zones." In most classrooms, students looked around with confused faces. They had never heard that kind of announcement before. Some laughed because they thought it was fake. Others looked scared because it sounded real. But in the classrooms with veteran students, things were different. Alex stood up the moment he heard the announcement. His voice was calm and clear. "Everyone listen to me. Stand up slowly. Leave your books and bags. We are going to walk quickly to the nearest exit. Stay together and stay quiet." The normal students in his class looked at him with surprise, but something in his voice made them listen. This was not the same Alex who sat in the back of the classroom. This was Commander Stone, who had led a ship through battle. What about the teacher? One girl asked. Alex looked at Mr. Barnes, who was reading from a paper about what to do during the drill. "Sir, with respect, we need to move now. I will take point. You bring up the rear and make sure no one gets left behind." Mr. Barnes started to argue, but Alex was already moving. The students followed him without question. In the chemistry lab, Danny heard the announcement and immediately went to the windows. He checked the exits and counted how many students were in the room. His teacher was still reading instructions from a folder. "Ma'am," Danny said politely, "we need to leave now. The east stairwell will be crowded. We should use the west exit." "The instructions say to use the main hallway," the teacher replied. "The instructions are wrong," Danny said. "Trust me." Something in his voice made her listen. Danny had switched from scared teenager to squad leader in seconds. He moved through the classroom, organizing students into groups and assigning each group a route. "You 5, go first. Stay low and move quickly. You 3, wait 30 seconds, then follow. Watch for my signal." The students followed his orders without question. They could tell he knew what he was doing. In the computer lab, Katie had already taken control of the situation. She was at the teacher's desk, using the intercom system to coordinate with other classes. Engineering Club, this is Katie. What is your status? Lisa's voice came back through the radio. We have 15 students in the workshop. All exits are clear. We are ready to move. Copy that. Move to Rally Point 2. Avoid the main hallway. Katie. Switch channels. Alex, where are you? Second floor, moving to the west stairwell. We have 25 students. No injuries. Danny, status report? Chemistry lab is clear. Moving to exit 3. I have eyes on the parking lot. No actual threats. Visible. The normal students watched in amazement as the veterans coordinated the evacuation like a military operation. They used words like copy, roger, and negative. They gave clear orders and expected them to be followed. In the main office, principal. Carter was trying to follow the written emergency plan. She was reading from a binder and making announcements over the intercom, but her voice was shaky and confused. All students should proceed to their designated areas. Teachers should, let me see, take attendance and... Her voice was cut off as Katie's voice came through the radio system. All students, this is command. Evacuate immediately using the following routes. North Wing students use exits 1 and 2. South Wing students use exits 3 and 4. Do not use the main entrance. Repeat, do not use the main entrance. Move quickly, but do not run. Help anyone who needs assistance. The emergency coordinators looked at each other with confusion. This was not part of the plan. Students were not supposed to take charge of the situation, but it was working. Instead of chaos and panic, the evacuation was happening smoothly. Students moved in organized groups. They helped each other and stayed calm. The veterans had turned the entire school into a well-coordinated team. Jake watched from outside as students poured out of the building in perfect order. There was no pushing, no screaming, no confusion. It looked like a military evacuation. Alex appeared at exit 2, leading a group of 50 students. He posted guards at the doors and established a safe perimeter. Danny emerged from exit 3, with another group, immediately setting up a communication post. Katie came out of the main building, carrying a laptop and coordinating with the other teams over radio. Lisa was the last to leave. She had stayed behind to make sure all the disabled students got out safely. She carried a boy with a broken leg on her back and guided a blind girl with her good arm. The entire school was evacuated in 12 minutes. The emergency coordinators had expected it to take at least an hour. Principal Carter stood in the parking lot, holding her emergency binder. She looked completely lost. Students were organized into neat groups, but she had not organized them. Teachers were checking attendance, but the veterans had already done head counts. How did they do this? One of the emergency coordinators asked Jake. They have experience, Jake said simply. But they are just kids. Jake smiled. No, they are not. They are leaders who happen to be young. The simulation was supposed to continue for several more hours. There were supposed to be more problems and complications. But the veterans had solved everything so quickly that there was nothing left to do. Alex approached Principal Carter. Ma'am, all students are accounted for. No injuries. Safe perimeter is established. What are your orders? Principal Carter stared at him. She had never seen a student take charge like this. I do not know. This was not supposed to happen. What? Was not supposed to happen? Alex asked. You are not supposed to be so competent. After the simulation, the school board held an emergency meeting. Parents came to ask questions. They had heard about what happened and wanted to know why their children were suddenly acting like leaders. My daughter came home and organized our entire household, one mother said. She made a family emergency plan and assigned everyone jobs. She has never done anything like that before. My son started a study group for his math class, another parent added. He said Alex Stone taught him that leaders help others succeed. My daughter joined the engineering club after she saw what Lisa could do, said a third parent. She wants to build things that help people. Principal Carter tried to explain that the veteran students were causing disruptions. But the parents were not complaining. They were impressed. These veteran students are teaching our children what real leadership looks like, one father said. My son respects them more than he has ever respected any adult. The school board voted to change the entire program. Instead of trying to make the veterans act like normal students, they would let the veterans be mentors and teachers. Danny became the head of the new Emergency Response Club. He taught other students how to stay calm in crisis situations and how to help others when things went wrong. Katie joined the debate team and the Model United Nations Club. Her experience with real diplomacy made her invaluable. She taught other students how to communicate clearly and solve problems peacefully. Lisa started an engineering program that combined classroom learning with real-world projects. Students learned by building things that actually worked and helped people. Alex became the youngest student council president in school history. He changed the entire student government system, making it more democratic and more effective. Jake watched his veterans transform the school around them. They had not become normal teenagers. Instead, they had shown everyone what young people could accomplish when they were given real responsibility and real respect. The war had taught them how to fight. High school taught them how to lead. And leadership, Jake realized, was just another kind of battle. A battle to make the world better than you found it. 6 months later, Jake received new orders. The Department of Veterans Affairs wanted him to expand the program to schools across the country. Other schools wanted their own veteran mentors. On graduation day, Jake watched his 4 veterans receive their diplomas. They wore their dress, uniforms instead of caps and gowns. Behind them stood dozens of normal students who had learned to stand a little straighter, work a little harder, and care a little more about others. The war had been easy compared to high school hell. But in the end, they had conquered both, not by giving up who they were, but by showing everyone else who they could become. The war had been easy compared to high school hell, but in the end, they had conquered both, not by giving up who they were, but by showing everyone else who they could become. Alex gave the graduation speech. He stood at the podium in his uniform and looked out at the crowd of students and parents. People think being young means you cannot do important things, he said. But we have learned that age does not determine what you can accomplish. Character does. Courage does. The willingness to help others does. He paused and looked at his fellow veterans. We came here as soldiers trying to become students. We learned that the best students are the ones who teach others. The best leaders are the ones who create more leaders. And the best way to honor those who died for our freedom is to use that freedom to make the world better. The audience stood and applauded. Jake wiped tears from his eyes. His veterans had found their purpose again. They were not just survivors of a war. They were builders of a better future. Outside the school, Jake looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other young humans might be fighting other battles. But here on Earth, a new generation was learning what it meant to be truly human. Strong enough to fight when fighting was needed. Wise enough to lead when leadership was required. And brave enough to care when caring was the hardest thing of all.